Hello, welcome to the night shift. This is all very strange, isn't it? But here we are. It's brilliant that you can join us. It's not even nighttime. Look, it's the middle of the day for me, but all bets are off. Thank you for joining the night shift. I love Somerset, where I live. I would love to be in the Lake District, in St John's Church doing the night shift, but not this time. And we hope to be with you again. So hopefully over the next hour, there'll be just a foretaste of what's to come next year, a reminder of what we've done in the years before, and just to keep those fires burning. But you'll have to play mug bingo by yourself. If you've got this mug, then you've clearly been at my mug cupboard, because this is my mug. So I don't know how you got hold of that. You have to play mug bingo on your own. I'm sure you'll figure it out. But let me hand over now to Rachel, who's got our first item for us.
We have the privilege of introducing you to Alistair Gordon. He is a London-based artist. He's the director of Morphe Arts, and he's also the team leader for Keswick Unconventional.
Rachel, hi everybody. Nice to kind of virtually see you.
It's not quite what we might have hoped for KU this year, but it is a privilege to be able to share a little bit of an update, particularly for you, of what's been happening for you in your art world. Things have been pretty different. Tell us a little bit about your lockdown.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. It has been different for all of us, I think. Some people have had some pretty horrendous lockdowns. I get that. Ours has been a little bit itchy in places. We're homeschooling our daughter, or not homeschooling her in some cases. The lessons haven't been all that great when it comes to maths and English and science. Art has been fantastic, I have to say. She is A+ in art now. So we've been doing that. To begin with, I pretty much didn't make a single thing, and then I started getting quite busy in the studio. So I've had an online virtual exhibition, and I've been making lots of paintings of matches.
I've enjoyed seeing a little bit of the matches at the beginning of lockdown on your Instagram. Tell us a little bit more about how those came to be.
Sure, yeah. Well, at the start of lockdown, I found myself into a daily rhythm of prayer, as many of us did, and actually prayed at 3 points in the day, in the morning with friends on Zoom, and then twice elsewhere. And I'd sit pretty much where I'm sitting right now. I'm coming to you from my studio in South London, which is also now my prayer room. And I have a candle next to the screen here. And 3 times in the day, I light the candle with the match. And then I paint the matches, you see, that are left over from that prayer time. So they became a diary of prayer. And I made one every day. So far, the count is 128 paintings like this. Little paintings of the matches. So they became a way of remembering this time, a way of remembering time in prayer.
And I saw a few of those sneaking into your recent virtual exhibition. There's been a bit of a change, maybe from the art that people might have seen from you last year or when they've been along to KU. Tell us a little bit about the shift in what you've been making and how you wound up doing a virtual exhibition.
Yeah, it's pretty wacky. Well, people probably know me for my hard-edged, tight, highly illusionistic painting, which are very, very controlled. And as lockdown went on, I found my prayer life became more restless, even agitated, as we went through time of COVID and the anxiety of that, but also time of protest. And I found myself, if I'm honest, raging in my times of prayer, and my painting started to reflect that. So they became much less controlled, and they became more of an intuitive response to these things that we were experiencing together and what I was experiencing through prayer. So these are paintings actually that began a couple of years ago in Calais during the jungle camp time, when I was working on a series of exhibitions there and workshops with artists who come from Eritrea and Syria and elsewhere. I'm working with artists who were mostly Christian, and they found themselves in this horrendous situation where they were locked down and trapped and not able to move. And we started to make paintings that would help reflect that sense of entrapment, but also to articulate the hope, the aspiration to be released from that, to travel. And it became for us very much a conversation about hope for better things beyond. We started talking about a hope for a new creation. What does that look like, not just in the future, but experience now? And when we look into the detritus and the rubble and the oppression that comes when systems crash down onto you, Where are the signs of light and colour and prayerfulness? So these are paintings that were made quite literally from the debris and detritus in the jungle camp. I then brought them back to the studio in London and embellished them and worked on them. And they became these little collage oil paintings. So they are the bedrock of the exhibition, and altogether about 15, 20 paintings altogether. This little one takes the title Thorn in the Flesh, which of course is taken from Paul's writing. And Paul talks about that niggle in his side. We don't quite know what that niggle is, whether it's a physical ailment that he has, or a theological question that he has, or perhaps even a matter of mental health. But he doesn't ask for it to be released. He holds that niggle, that thorn in tension. And for me, this time of lockdown, it was very much like that thorn in the flesh, that irritant, that frustration, that actually led me to prayer and led me to hope for better things. So this is titled Thorn in the Flesh. Shall I show you one more?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, this was the title for the exhibition. The show is called Without Borders, and it was with Aleph Contemporary, which is a London gallery, and curated by John Silvis, who is a New York-based curator. And this little piece is oil and collage onto a wooden panel, and it's reminiscent of some of the hoarding and boarding that one would find in places like the jungle camp, or that we find around about London at the moment. And as our movement is restricted, there are all these boards all over the place as you walk around, telling you where to go, where not to go. And it became to me a little bit symbolic or metaphorical of that access, of wanting to move to the places and spaces, but being denied by that. So there we are. That's a wee taster of the show. So there we are. There's a few of the paintings.
I really enjoyed a virtual walk around. It was, if I'm honest, it was better than I hoped. It worked very well to look around. And I saw quite a few items of footwear appearing in quite a few of the works. Was that a particular theme?
Yeah. These are shoes and flip-flops that actually I came across. Some of them were in jungle camp after the camps were cleared. And you had all this debris and detritus that was left over that said something about the people who were there. And of course, there's a great melancholy when you look at these objects and these items. And interestingly, I saw them again after the protests, after the Black Lives Matter protests here in London, where we're left with flyers and photographs and other forms of detritus left behind, and shoes. I've painted shoes before. I made a series of paintings titled The Feet of Those, and they were shoes that belonged to members of the homeless community here in London and missionaries who work with London City Mission, who are helping that street community. So the shoes keep coming back, Rachel. Now I think about it, there's a reoccurring thing there. I wonder if I've got a weird shoe thing going on.
I think there's a lot of identity in a shoe, of how people wear it and what they choose to wear, if it's a fashion statement or if it's practical. But it is, beautifully encaptured. Another thing to have seen, it really stood out for me, was that top left-hand teddy bear put in alongside all the detritus of everything else. I understand you've worked back into some of these works. How has that been, going back to stuff?
Yes, this is a painting that began life as part of an artist residency project that I was given at the City and Guilds of London Art Schools. And it began as a very tight academic painting of objects that had been left behind by the students. One of them, randomly, was this teddy bear. And I picked up the teddy bear and started painting him. I made a really tight painting. And to me, something about the painting it never quite worked. It sort of bugged me. And now I know what it is. It was too controlled. It was too rigid. And during lockdown, God's been telling me a lot, teaching me a lot about relinquishing control to him. And as I've done that, I've also done that through my painting and relinquished control. And so this teddy bear then became stuck in this mass of objects some of them are collaged and some of them are painted. Again, thinking back to the camp clearances in Calais, those times after the protests, when one sees all these objects that represent human migration and transition. And there's a sense of melancholy where, human creativity and endeavor is being lost and subsumed by all this stuff, all this system of oppression. But at the same time, there are little pockets of hope as you delve down and you see evidence of great creativity and life. So the teddy bear is a new thing. I think Teddy might come back again. It's just my daughter's favourite.
Thinking about chapters, and this feels like another chapter for your work. Do you see this continuing? Do you see there being another chapter to come that will be quite different again as we come out of COVID?
Yes, this is the start of something new in my painting career, and these paintings have allowed me to speak more openly about my faith in the public square and in the gallery circuit. I'm probably better known outside of Christendom than I am inside. I'm probably better known in the art world. I live and I move and I breathe in the art world. That is where I work. And it can sometimes be a little problematic to talk about things of faith in the art world. You get labelled as the bigot and the narrow-minded and the lack of intelligence and all the things that sometimes brings. But these paintings have been an opportunity for me to talk more openly about things of faith. And the galleries that represent me, wouldn't speak from a Christian position at all. But yet, in these exhibitions, I've talked about prayer, and I've talked about how the Holy Spirit shapes the way that I paint, and I've talked about aspects of new creation and hope for the new creation. So I'm not going to stop that. And I'm really excited about these new paintings. There's another exhibition coming up that's going to be in about a year's time with the same gallery. And at the same time, I'm writing quite a bit as well. So I've just finished the first draft of a book, Why Art Matters, which is coming out in April. And in that, I'm talking as well about Christian responses to painting and the hope we have for new creation as seen through the lens of the Bible, but also thinking about that as an artist and for artists. So that one's coming out too.
And where can we see or hear more from you on the internet?
One thing about lockdown is we're all much more visible on the internet, aren't we? So I think you just Google me and you'll get to a character from Doctor Who who's called Alistair Gordon. Can't beat him. He's right at the top of Google search. But underneath him, you'll find me. And I'm on the Ala Contemporary website, the Morphe Arts website. Pretty active on Instagram as well, Rachel, as you know, like you.
I've been enjoying your Instagram. I can give that a hearty recommendation to go and have a nosy around. Alistair_Gordon for some beautiful pieces where you've done, especially where something starts. I love swiping through to see the old and the new as it comes together. It's been a real privilege.
Thank you. Nice to chat.
Huge thanks again to Alistair Gordon. I could sit and listen to that chap talk all day or look at his artwork, as indeed you can if you do head over to his Instagram. But he will be back. He will be interviewing a Natalie Mccleary, an actor, after we've heard some music from Paul Bell. And I do warn you, this song might have you humming it while you're brushing your teeth. Enjoy.
Hi there, it's great to be sharing a song with you, and this is a song I wrote about buffets. Does anyone remember buffets? We used to have them before lockdown, and hopefully one day we'll have them again. I wrote this song about buffets and the way I approach a buffet. If we're honest, I think all of us have got a game plan, haven't we? We've got some kind of technique that we use when we approach a buffet. Maybe it's just the plate with a little bit of hand support for the odd extra tomato that might roll off, or something like that. We've all got a game plan. And I wrote this, it's called Buffet Strategies, and it's a bit of a new enterprise for me because it's a song in which I rap. This is the first song I've ever rapped in. And in that respect, I like to think of myself as an older, less successful, less ginger Ed Sheeran. And I've checked all those things, and that's all factually accurate. I am all of those things. So I'm going to share with you this song. It's called Buffet Strategies, and I hope you enjoy. Here we go. Here we are at the wedding, and I don't mean to be rude, but already my attention has turned into food. It's getting late, about 8:15, so excuse me if I'm starting to salivate. My hungry eyes can't help but check out every platter and bowl that's being brought out. My mouth's getting ready for something to chew, because we only got invited to the evening do. The dance floor fills with 8-year-olds. Fernando blasts out on the stereo. Now comes the end of all my waiting and hoping as I hear the DJ say the buffet is now open. I'm poised, ready to spring into action. Once the queue has subsided to my satisfaction, I approach without fear or trepidation, cause I know how to handle myself at a reception. Buffet strategies, buffet strategies. These are my buffet strategies. There's 37 verses. Walking up to the table, please don't disturb me. I'm assessing the feast that's been laid out before me. Whatever reactions run through my head, I agree politely, it's a lovely spread. You gotta beware the unsupervised children grabbing handfuls of what's-its, then off they run. Someone's combined the frazzles with the quavers, but when it comes to crisps, you should never mix your flavours. It's worse when they mix up the regular crisps. You never know what will be passing your lips. It's a voyage to the unknown, but never a fun one. Will it be salt and vinegar or cheese and onion? Wedges, crisps, chicken nuggets, chips. A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. But you can't deny there's no point getting ragey. It feels so good to eat something that's beigey. Buffet strategies, buffet strategies. These are my buffet strategies. Palms are sweaty, knees weak, plate is heavy. There's hummus on my tie already, so carb heavy. I'm nervous, but on the surface I look calm and ready. Give me something meaty, something green, something bready. Now I'm looking for something spicy to snaffle. Is that a bhaji or maybe a falafel? This is the arena that keeps me coming back, so I always load up on the Indian snacks. How you handle dips and crudities is up for debate. Should you make your own dip reservoir on your plate, or pre-dip your carrots and pre-dip your celery? Just try a bit to make sure the hummus isn't fizzy. You gotta give these things a little thought. Treat the buffet like a mission or an Olympic sport. Sometimes we all need a little help, but sometimes you gotta help yourself. Let me hear you say buffet strategies, buffet strategies. You gotta help yourself, y'all. Buffet strategies. We're all moving as fast as we are able. If only we could use both sides of the table. The atmosphere is still fairly cordial, but uh-oh, who's this having a dawdle? We're all quite patient, but seriously, sheesh, how long does it take to choose a slice of quiche? Could you get a move on? We're starting to get bored. Have you never spread clover on a baguette before? I know it's bad manners to consider overtaking, but can't you see how many people are waiting? There's a reason we don't want you to be slow. Gotta grab a decent pudding before they all go. Oh, buffet strategies, buffet strategies. There's only one slice of cheesecake left. Now I've gone and got myself a tasty coleslaw with a little tater salad. There's nothing I like more. I'm worried that they've run out of forks. No, not for a minute. I brought my own spork. Oh, not for me, the indignity of trying to eat couscous without cutlery. And when it comes to pudding, the spork is still your friend. Just flip it round and tuck into some trifle with the spoon end. Buffet strategies, buffet strategies. Just flip it round and tuck into some trifle with the spoon end. Buffet strategies, buffet strategies. Now seconds are good, but thirds you might regret it. If you're contemplating fourths, you should really forget it. Don't forget the hardest one of the lot. The most important strategy is knowing when to stop. Buffet strategies, buffet strategies. The most important strategy is knowing when to stop. Buffet strategies, buffet strategies. The most important strategy is knowing when to stop.
Well, hi everybody. So I'm here with Natalie Mccleary, who is an actor based in Glasgow. Natalie has a background in dance and performance, but more recently has moved into the acting world, and having featured in various TV roles and theatre productions, not least in the touring show Frankenstein, where she played Frankenstein's love interest, of all things. Natalie's a Christian, very open to talking about her faith in the industries, which is quite an unusual thing, as we often find that the arts industries aren't so sympathetic to that open Christian voice. But yet Nat has been wonderfully open about her faith. And Nat, Welcome to Keswick Unconventional. Nice to see you.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
So normally we would be sitting on a stage with cups of tea in hand, but here we are. You're in your flat in Glasgow. I'm here in my studio in South London. I've got my cup of tea. Do you have a cup of tea with you?
I don't. I actually have a large can of Coke.
A large can of nondescript fizzy drink. Lovely. Brought to you by Fizzy Drinks. So Natalie, you grew up in Coatbridge, which is an industrial town, not that far out of Glasgow, and perhaps not best known for its creative arts community, or am I getting that wrong? How did you end up getting into acting and performance?
I was taking a year out at the time, and I wanted to do something new. And I was Glasgow City Council had put out this leaflet about like fun new tasks, fun new hobbies, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I have nothing else to do. I started flicking through, and there was a course on finger painting, and then there was a course on contemporary dance. And I thought, anyone can be a painter. Why don't
Anyone can be a painter.
Oh dear. Anyone? Yeah, I was like, no, maybe not finger painting. Maybe I will go for contemporary dance. Never done it before. Yeah, I went along, did it, loved it. And the woman who was running it asked me what I was doing for the rest of the year. She ran a course in Glasgow for vocational dance course. And I thought to myself, I'm not doing anything this year. So that was it. After that, straight on the course.
A nice one. And you were hooked.
I was hooked.
Imagining what would have happened if you did take that class in finger painting. That could have been a whole different direction.
Yeah, I might have rivaled you, Ali.
You might have been, we might be painting together or something. And so growing up in Coatbridge as well, Coatbridge, I can't imagine that many people who come from a mixed race family, which you do. Is that an unusual thing?
Yeah, it was unusual at the time. My parents were, and I mean, it's not historically unusual, but in terms of its regularity of occurrence, it was unusual in Glasgow to have mixed race kids.
And when I think of performance, of course, I think of performance as being an outworking of who we are. We share the stories of who we are through our performance. And I wonder how your experiences growing up have come to flavour your dance, and then more recently your acting work.
Not intentionally in any way. I think subconsciously it did. There was definitely internalized racism. All of these things sort of hangovers from growing up in a predominantly white environment, I think. And those things are now I'm beginning to unpick and also explore in my own work, which is interesting for me, at least. But I think important as well that these things are spoken about and, I don't know, held up to discussion, held up to conversation, because the reality is the shifting landscape of Scottish identity is only going to get more diverse. So yes. I think we have to learn from the past, discuss the past, so that we can positively impact the present, I think, particularly.
Of course, these are things that have come to mind recently during lockdown as we think about the Black Lives Matter campaign. And I guess we're all coming to terms with racism that we hadn't seen before. And we're coming to terms with that in the arts as well, right? And I think for many people, it's been a really painful protest, been a very painful process. But these are things that have been on your mind for quite some time, and I think possibly in your practice as well for quite some time as well.
Yeah, I think probably honestly for just shy of a decade now in terms of what it is to, because you can't disengage from the politics of your body, it's impossible, and you can't disengage from the experiences of inhabiting a particular kind of body. There are no ways of escaping this wonderful earthly tent we all get to enjoy for however long we're here. So I think moving away from dance, it's been interesting to see what comes with you and what transitions into text-based work and what stays very much within that physical realm of performance.
So your latest piece, your latest work is called Dero. And this isn't a work specifically about mixed race or about racism. I'm looking at the deer behind you, and actually it's a short film, a commissioned film about a conversation, a relationship between a man and a deer. which sounds rather existential, maybe a little bit surreal. Could you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, I guess it is surreal. I tend to find that a surreal space allows you to engage with the content in a way that automatically raises questions and automatically invites you to question.
It sounds like a project that you're working out as you go through it. It's a 1-minute film as well, which is an unusual thing at that. And it sounds to me a little bit experimental, as in you work through the process as you go. And how do you find existing in that world, in that space where you're making something that isn't formulaic per se, but something that perhaps is a little bit more intuitive?
I much prefer it. I think you allow yourself the opportunity to push boundaries to a place where they may or may not work. And I think there's always that question of how far you can go pushing a form before the form itself no longer supports the content or the material. And I don't know, I think we can play it very safe, because especially within a narrative context or a film context, there is a storytelling formula that works. And I don't know, I'm interested in what it is to create a space where a story is told but unconventionally, in the sense of you have to fill in gaps, or you have to engage with it in a way that also imparts part of your experience or your story.
You've talked about story in terms of embodied truth, even as a form of embodied hope. In fact, not just story, but acting and performance as a form of embodied truth. And I'm curious about that. What is it about performance and acting that can communicate truth, even hope, in a way that's different from other forms of communication?
Well, I think there's something about the fact that we always experience our environment, we experience anything physically as much as we do in any other way. And our bodies and our physical histories filter our current experiences, and you just can't get away from that. And when you have a physical body in front of you, in a performance space, in a performance mode, you already know that there's an intention for communication. So your body's already primed to receive information, even if you're not conscious of it. It could be a black box, just a body. You automatically start to dream narrative onto that physicality. You start to ask questions. You start to wonder, why they're here, why are they wearing that? And, why are they not speaking? Why are they speaking? And automatically you start to build a narrative, build a character around that person. And I think what's exciting for me in terms of an embodied experience is that all the experiences we have physically that are subconscious feed into our ability to relate to another. And then if that body in itself is encapsulating truth or telling us something, then we have the opportunity to engage on a much deeper level when we have a visceral and physical reaction.
As I hear you speak, I think about how Christ described his church as not just a temple, but as a body. We are a body. And so we can think about bodily truth as a church collectively, but also individually. We have Christ's Spirit in us, right? That changes us. Paul says we are a new creation. And so when we think about our hope for the future, when we think about new creation yet to come, we also need to be thinking about how the new creation is manifest now and today and inside of us. And I wonder in what ways performance and the physicality of storytelling can even not just point towards the new creation, but can actually embody things of the new creation.
Yeah, I think this is lovely in its simplicity, for me anyway. I'm sure other people might disagree, but I think one of the most beautiful things is the cohabitation of this physical form. It inhabits Natalie and it inhabits the spirit. And both of those coexist. And on top of that, then I have life union with Jesus. So I don't have to make that happen. I don't have to press the Holy Spirit button to activate him. I don't have to mantle him. I don't have to do anything. I just have to turn up. And I think there's something very freeing about that for us as performers who do have a faith that actually God is already there part of the process, part of the creative process, and also part of the performance.
I love that. We just have to turn up, right? And Christ is in us. We have to turn up. Yeah, yeah. Through lockdown, Natalie, I know you've had a process of prayer, and particularly in the mornings, you've been dedicating time to prayer and reflection. And what a gift to have at that time in lockdown. I'm interested in how that has shaped the way you think about yourself, about God, about your faith, about the way you think about the creative arts. What's God been saying to you in those times of prayer and reflection in the mornings?
The first thing he says is, "What are you doing up at this hour?" Because I am not a morning person. Historically, anyway. I think that dynamic is beginning to change slightly. But yeah, I have really enjoyed having the freedom of time and the quiet in the morning, and just taking ownership of the space that is created by not having to turn my phone on until midday. And I've discovered that most things can wait to midday. Doesn't seem to be many things that must urgently be done before 12 o'clock or spoken about before 12 o'clock. And I've stopped being on social media for the last 10 weeks, just stopped engaging with it. In fact, it must be longer than that now. But, and I don't miss it.
Yeah.
But what I've discovered is actually, in terms of my relational dynamic with God, that to be able to press in the mornings when it's quiet, and the intentionality I have when I'm engaging with other people, and also when I'm being creative and I'm writing.
I know you've thought quite a lot about the idea of calling during lockdown as well, and this is one of the gifts of having time, is to reflect on these things and the relationship between the calling we have. We're all called to be Christian, right? But going beyond that, what might be specific for us as individuals, what plans God might have for us in the future. Do you feel a sense of calling, can I put it that way, in terms of your own life and your own work?
Paul talks about it all the time, and I just reading through the New Testament is just, I'm like, how did I miss this? Like, I mean, there's actually reading through the Bible a lot now. I'm like, I've missed a lot.
Right.
I have missed a lot. So thank goodness that I've got, hopefully, God willing, years to keep reading it and keep gleaning from it. But one of the things that has been most interesting is this idea of intentionality in my creation. So like Psalm 139 in the Passion Translation is absolutely stunning, and I can't recommend it enough. But the intentionality of my God in creating me as he has his design for me, the skills and the giftings and the personality, you know, he made me for a reason. And I feel like one of the ways in which the enemy has immobilized the church is by homogenizing us for a start. What is my calling? What are the good works you've already set out for me to do? And what is my path? What is my role within the kingdom in terms of advancing God's kingdom and also bringing Jesus back?
Natalie, that's been amazing chatting to you. Thank you so much. I could listen to you speak for hours and hours, I think. Thank you so much for jumping into Keswick Unconventional and sharing a little bit of your world with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
It's been great. So we're now going to jump to two Keswick Unconventional favourites, and it's my pleasure to introduce Carol and Stuart Henderson. Carol is a writer, broadcaster, and more recently has turned her hand to iconographic painting. And if you listen to Radio 4, Radio 2, then you've probably heard Carol's dulcet tones at some point or another. Stuart's voice also will be recognisable to you, especially if you have children at school age, and Stuart's poems have been a staple of Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 for many, many years. He is a poet and a broadcaster. One of his recent works, A Poet's Handbook, is actually just up here on my shelf here in the studio. More importantly, they are followers of Jesus Christ, a brother and sister on the journey. So let's give a bit of jazz hand welcome to Stuart and Carol Henderson.
Least said, soonest mended. Least said, soonest mended. Well, here we are, very far from Zen, and I don't think it's turned out nice again. And you can't say nout in case thousands get offended. Least said, soonest mended. The nights are foaming and the days fermenting. The patio's cracked and it needs cementing, and my cheery garden gnomes have all been upended. least said, soonest mended. And they're shooting their own at the BBC, and the abacus is arbitrary. At the Treasury, life's terms and conditions have been amended, least said, soonest mended. The bread is hard, and the vessel is dry. Decorum's been ditched as our sins multiply. Civility's values have been suspended, least said, soonest mended. Desecration gangs do unspeakable things, the equivalent of pulling off a butterfly's wings. The violation pit to which we've descended, least said, soonest mended. But we keep ticking over, best not make a fuss, though the plagues of Egypt have got nothing on us. The apocalypse date keeps being extended, least said, soonest mended. Shangri-La's shut, we're bereft of the wise, though chandelier planets still brilliant the skies. The end may be coming, but the story's not ended. Least said, soonest mended. One day soon, soonest mended. Any time when, soonest mended. Looking for signs when we're soonest mended.
Especially now should be the feast days of the tingling language, with couplets and verve verses, ideal for morose sable evenings as we mope and mule behind the sandbags. Especially now should be the oddball hallelujahs and sunny sonnets suitable for interments, estrangements and catastrophes. Counterverse available over the counter, deeper than shipwrecks and fathomable, especially now. For these are the raving, strapped to our bed days. The afternoons have been sectioned, the mornings dare not leave the house. Especially now should be the tumbling tongues of the perverse and palliative, words that are a harpsichord at a bullfight, ballads that breach the stale partitions, that scale the entrenched towers, words to whistle in the tumult, beseeching irregular anthems, choruses that cascade torrents of stillness, goldfinch profound, to prostrate the sanctimonious, the synthetic, and the simulated holiness in us. Elegies for the desolate and decimated, especially now. The reckless, rash, goosebumps language, especially now.
Lovely to hear from the Hendersons. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Carol. We will hear again from Carol at the end of the show. She's got a little something for us to send us out. But we have Yvonne Lyon before that, a friend of Keswick Unconventional over the years. And before that, we have James Carey in conversation with Milton Jones.
Milton Jones, thanks very much for joining us. It's almost like you need no introduction because you're a very well-known comedian who can now tour the country, 60, 70, 80 dates, playing very large houses. But thanks very much for joining us.
Mm-hmm. No, pleasure. Nice to see you again.
Indeed, yes. And we've worked together, obviously, on your show. I think we've done at least 50 episodes together.
Oh, yes.
We've spent many an hour trapped in a room trying to work out the funniest version of a joke about toast.
Yes, but it pops up in the end.
It does, it does, and then gets edited at the final moment.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. But why don't you go back to the beginning and talk about how you got started as a comedian, and crucially, how you kept going? Because I think you probably know a lot of very funny people who gave up.
Absolutely.
And actually, it's the ones who keep going. How did you keep going?
Well, I didn't have many alternatives, to be honest. So that's, sort of laugh about it, but actually, there are a lot of people who had really good jobs. In fact, John Bishop would say his career never really took off until he gave up the day job. I knew him years and years ago doing club gigs, and he'd always be very good, but he had a job, I think he was a rep for a chemicals company or something like that, quite a well-paid job. And it wasn't until he became 100% committed to doing the comedy that things really got going.
Right.
And that's true of several people. And when I talk to young kids and stuff who were talking about getting involved in comedy, I said, well, you have to do it 100%. You have to give it at least 2 years of 100%. Otherwise, you will never know for sure.
Yeah.
The other analogy I've used before is if you go into a rugby tackle 100%, you stand less chance of ending up hurt.
Yeah.
Than if you go in going, this is probably going to hurt. So being committed is one thing. I mean, I wanted to be an actor years ago. I'm admittedly a comedy actor, but
Hamlet was never quite the aim, as it is for many actors.
No, I'm still hoping though.
Oh yeah. Hang on, surely this has got to be it, hasn't it? Milton Jones's Hamlet.
Yes, Piglet. Yeah. But the comedy circuit as it exists up until now anyway, goodness knows what it will be this time next year. But when I was starting, was literally called the alternative circuit. And it was very much a stepping stone to doing something else, be it on television or even being a producer or, all sorts of things. But as I stayed with it and as I didn't do much acting work, gradually it became my job and comedy became a bigger thing and it lost its alternative tag and became an industry in and of itself. During the 90s and the noughties, it became, somewhere where you could actually earn a living in itself. And actually that turned out better for me because I didn't have to be in someone else's play I didn't want to be in. I was writing my own stuff. I was traveling myself. I had a young family at the time. It was just a lot more flexible. Mm. And it was the thing that was working as well. And I had a few good Edinburghs and found David Tyler, the radio producer we have. He found me rather, and we've started doing radio things. And then gradually I did bits of television. Years ago, there wasn't that much on TV you could do stand-up. There'd be a stand-up show, but it wasn't really until panel shows got going that there were a lot more comedians on TV. Michael McIntyre had his own show, he had his road show. Suddenly at sort of 2010-ish, there were lots of opportunities for stand-ups on TV.
Yeah. And
loads of people I had been with for nearly 20 years suddenly became famous overnight. And I was sort of lucky. I wasn't one of the first ones to be able to do that, but I managed to find a gap somewhere and I got on to Mock the Week in the end. So then I was doing radio and Mock the Week, and I've been touring quite a lot in the last 10 years. But yes, you're right. Almost the single most thing I am proud of in my career, now your goalposts move once you achieve a certain level, is I've kept going.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound very much, but artistically how you have to reinvent yourself every 7 years or whatever it is, because all the producers change, the people who book stuff change, you get fed up artistically.
Yeah.
And you need to just do something else. You can never sit still and go dead behind the eyes because you will find you're not booked within quite a quick period. So it's all about reinventing yourself and coming up with new stuff, even when you don't feel like it. So it's a bit like a marathon in that you hit a wall every so often.
Yeah.
And it's it's a mental thing. It's inside you, whether you can keep going or whether you just tread water for a bit. And that's, I think if you talk to most comics, they'd say that's the hardest single thing, to keep your appetite without, I might have said this to you before, but I had an interesting conversation with Hugh Dennis once about, someone asked him what his ambition was. And he said, not to become bitter.
Wow.
And it was actually quite a profound thing to say, because we all know people who are famous who are bitter about the opportunity they missed.
Huh.
And never mind what's happened to them successfully. It's really easy to get down the glass 1/8 empty route. And I think even when younger guys are coming through as well, perhaps doing more work than you are, or getting straight onto television without doing their 10 years on the circuit.
Yeah.
It's very easy to go, wow, that's not fair. But actually, it's just how it is, and it's not a personal thing. And it happens in every single job, actually.
Right, yeah.
In sport or, companies, I guess. And it's about trying to be grateful for what you've had rather than ungrateful for what you haven't had. And that's not a bad life lesson anyway.
Well, it sounds like, in a way, as a Christian, you almost have an advantage. I know we tend to focus on the difficulties that Christians have, especially in the entertainment industry, because there are certain things they can and can't do, or probably shouldn't do, and I think a lot of those are pretty debatable. But it feels like you've seen an awful lot of people become extremely bitter. Incredibly successful people become bitter, and there are other people who aren't in any way successful, and you think, what's wrong with you? You should be very bitter. There seems to be kind of no link, really, almost between the success and it feels like it's character and disposition. So, do you feel that being a Christian has actually been a real benefit and a blessing in that way?
There's several different levels to that, in the sense that I don't think I would have ever done stand-up had I not been a Christian. It's very hard to measure because you're not quite sure what would have happened, but I don't think I would have had these, for want of a better phrase, self-belief,
right,
to stand up. The truth, whether I believe it or not at any one time is another thing, but I am not my job and what I do. My identity is somewhere else. It's in God. That's the truth of the situation. Now, I may wake up at 3:30 in the morning and think, how am I going to pay the bills?
Yeah.
And
Moses did that.
Yeah. I think we've all been doing a lot of that recently.
Absolutely.
What if this happens? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, my identity is not in my work, although I enjoy my work and it's great, and I've met a lot of great people and done a lot of interesting things. But the theory, at least, is that if it all went down tomorrow, as long as I was sure I was on the right path, it shouldn't matter. So there's a sense in which you can let go of your career. I'm asking to be tested on this by saying all this, but anyway, if you can let go of it, it suddenly becomes easier to enjoy, I think.
Yeah.
Because everything is a bonus.
Yeah.
It's like going to a buffet that you're not paying for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you may get the whistle to do something else, but in the meantime,
or you'll get a greater passion to do something else. And some people, they do stand up for a while, and suddenly other opportunities open up, and they feel more passionate about those. And comedy club is very alien to the Christian, because it feels like the rules of the game are very different and probably not very Christian. And is that a place for Christians to be? And actually you would probably argue that it is, and you maybe have to fight slightly differently, but you are going to have to fight, and that's okay, because when people pay their money to go in, they are consenting to this kind of engagement. Is there something in that?
Yeah, and it's another fundamental difference between church and comedy clubs. The aim is entirely different.
Yeah.
In the church, the leaders and people are there to try and get closer to God and to worship. But in a comedy club, the people are being paid to make everyone laugh.
Yeah.
And as far as the people running the club are concerned, it doesn't matter why they're laughing. It's just
at or with.
yeah, absolutely. And you've got to find a way of coping in those situations. It's a small picture, if stylized, of where we are in the world.
Right.
Aren't we supposed to be in there?
Yeah.
And that's going to be messy, just messy.
Yeah.
And it's about being salt and light in those places.
Yeah.
So quite often someone will ask me to come and do a church gig. And I do them very occasionally, usually for friends or somewhere I know. But I say, no, please come and see me where in my natural habitat.
Yeah.
Where it's normal.
Yeah, yeah.
And quite often they build the evening as we want to have a really normal evening in our church where people come and have food, and then there's cabaret, and then we give them a message. I said, that's not normal.
That's not a normal evening, but
No
for
one
anyone,
does that.
not even for Christians, that's
No.
not a normal.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's lots of culture clash and assumptions built. And the other thing, which ought to be pointed out, is I am not an evangelist or a teacher. I am a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to be. I haven't got a message for the church. I can make up some jokes.
Yeah.
But they may lead you down the wrong path. So
yeah, and that's on you. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. If anything, people say, "What's your calling? What's your calling?" Okay, well, if I had to put it into words, I'd say it's to stand up.
Okay.
Do stand up.
Yeah. I mean, there are other jobs you can do standing up, Milton. I don't know if you've looked into this.
Window cleaner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it may come to that next year. I'm not sure. But also standing up for what I believe as and when, not all the time.
Yeah.
But just when it's appropriate.
Mm.
And I'm not going to tag everything with an altar call.
Mm.
Because that's not my job.
Yeah.
So in the same way you wouldn't invite a Christian plumber to come and show how he fixes toilets and then have a little talk afterwards.
The theme for KU and for the Virtually Keswick this year is hope. And as we sort of already hinted at, comedy has a reputation, especially among Christians, for being a bit negative, tearing stuff down, pointing and laughing and that kind of stuff. That's obviously a certain type of comedy that we would recognize. And, and there is a Christian version of that. I'm sure there is a perfectly Christian way of being Frankie Boyle, you would think.
Yeah.
But how do you think that comedy and comedians and comedy writing can bring hope to both the church and also our society?
Well, yes, as you say, I mean, pulling stuff down isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
If it's rooted in some kind of bad attitude.
Yeah. Or it's rotten.
Yeah. I mean, it's satire. And to a lesser extent, observational comedy gets to truth.
Yeah.
Michael McIntyre with his man draw or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And people going, oh, yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
And, obviously truth is hopefully at the centre.
Yeah.
And yes, it's just an observation, but I don't know about other people, but there's something in me that when the truth is discovered, you just go, yes.
Right. Yeah.
Even if it's a small detail of a quirk of living.
Yeah.
And I love it when people uncover that and just dispel. You feel an image or a joke can, although it is words, it can say more than 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Everyone goes, yeah, we were all kidding ourselves, weren't we? Or yes, we all do that. The other thing that comedy can do, of course, is bring joy.
Yeah.
Doesn't always. Sometimes comedy can be cruel and bullying. But I often use this example, but Tim Vine, who we both know, you sit in a club with him where there are other acts on who are being difficult and horrible. He just jokes. And in the end, people laugh in a different way.
Yeah.
It's not, you can't say he's bringing the government down.
No.
You can't say he's, giving it to Trump.
Yeah.
He's just doing stupid jokes.
Yeah.
He's being a clown.
Yeah.
And when that's done properly, of course it looks easy, but you're putting joy in people, and that, pure joy should be a Christian thing. So it's indirect.
Yeah. Well, except as you say that, I was just mindful, you've mentioned salt and light earlier. That joy is a sort of a light, isn't it? And it just lights up a room. Yeah. And a room that has just been, that has had kind of snide and vicious comedy in it, of a type that it kind of works, but it's not stuff that Christians would particularly either want to do or want to watch. And then somebody bounds on with just a whole completely different persona of joy, and it is like someone switched on a light. In a positive way. There's another one where somebody switches on a light and it's just like, what's been happening here? And everyone starts looking at their shoes. But light has that effect on both, doesn't it? It sort of illuminates and it also shames. Thanks so much for giving us an insight into the brain and the experiences of a comedian who is also a Christian. We really appreciate it, Milton. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jan, for that. It's Yvonne Lyon up next.
Hello, lovely people of KU. Oh, I'm so sorry we can't be together, but welcome to sunny Greenock. I left the windows open so you could actually see that it's not a myth. It is sunny in Greenock just as it is sunny in Keswick all the time. And welcome to our living room, where I realised I had quite a few Keswick curiosities, so I thought I would share them with you if that's okay. And whenever I go to Keswick, I always go to the little antique shop which is next to the Square Orange, my favourite coffee shop, and I always buy a bottle. Weird? Yeah. But I thought I'd share this with you. This is one of the first ones I bought, and this is ginger beer, a ginger beer bottle, but not just any ginger beer, it's reliable ginger beer, Ross's reliable ginger beer, all the way from Dumfries. So there you go. So that sits up there, and my favourite one here is this tiny little one which actually says lung tonic, which quite frankly is what we all need. Perhaps that could contain the vaccine, who knows? Lung tonic, that's what we need from Hull. And this little thing here, in case you're wondering what this is, Sally Ann, the lovely Sally Ann, bought me this. This is a beautiful kingfisher which is made out of recycled spoons. Absolutely gorgeous, and that was bought from the market in Keswick. Beautiful gift from her. So there you go. And one final one, if you're wondering about this beautiful piece of stained glass, it's by a local artist called Alec Galloway, and I got this made especially, and it's called a sea harp. But it's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, I love it. And the connection there is that I think it was last year Alec went for the very first time to Keswick and stayed there and fell in love with the village and fell in love with the Square Orange as well. So there you go. So welcome. I'm so sorry we can't be together in person and we can't be sitting on those really uncomfortable pews together, but hopefully you'll have a lovely comfy chair, a lovely comfy sofa, and you can enjoy the KU offerings this year. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to sing a little song for you. Today I saw an angel. She was smaller than I'd hoped for. I would have recognized her sooner had there been a shining light, or white wings and a halo like you see in all the movies. Heaven has a way of sometimes sneaking up on you, and all eternity is wrapped up in her smile. She whispered with her eyes, everything's fine, just fine. Everything's fine, just fine. Lights had turned to red and I was safe in my defenses. I didn't see her kindness coming for the nonsense in my head. A devastating moment in a language far from spoken.
She looked deep in my soul, and then she stole away my heart, and all eternity was wrapped up in her smile. She whispered with her eyes, everything's fine, just fine. Everything's fine, just fine. Everything's fine, just fine. Everything's fine, just fine. And happy is the heart that finds a way to overcome. Despite a world that turns you upside down, you can shout louder now. You can sing louder now. Everything's fine, just fine. Everything's fine, just fine. Everything's fine, just fine. Everything's fine, just fine.
Thanks so much to Yvonne Lyon there. Again, you can check out her music on that internet. Thanks also to DL, who's also been doing a lot of plumbing behind the scenes on the internet and sending videos and files. To Rachel, who's also been doing fabulously, stitching it all together into what is hopefully a seamless viewing experience for you. Probably much less chaotic than the show is actually on the night when we're at St John's at Keswick. But anyway, that's very much to look forward to next year. We really hope and pray that will be the case. In the meantime, if you're getting withdrawal symptoms, you could actually check out the Keswick Convention podcast. And actually, the last episode is a conversation between me and Yvonne, who's actually written the theme tune for the podcast, or at least we're using one of her tracks. So thank you to everybody who's taken part in this. Thank you to Virtually Keswick. And we really look forward to hopefully being all together next year, God willing. But until then, cheerio.
We said we'd hear a little more from Carol, and here she is with something of hope for a very dark time.
The hairs on our heads have been numbered. Our fingerprints prove we're unique. And though science and surgeons could scoop out our hearts, that still wouldn't remove the mystique of being made something from nothing and given the jewel of free will to love or abstain, to sin or refrain, to cartwheel through life or sit still.